Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising, chapters 6 through 13, or I guess 7 through 13, my bad. And this is going into part 2, Reborn. Chapter 7, Lazarus. 8, Dancer. 9, The Lie. 10, The Carver. 11, Mad. 12, The Carving. And 13, Bad Things. In these chapters, we find out that this fucking planet has been habitable for like 500 years. That... I feel like I should have seen this coming. I didn't see this coming. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Ashley for commissioning this episode. Ashley is here in the chat with me. Hi, Ashley. Delighted to have you. Y'all, when I tell you, I knew there was going to be something major that they were being lied to about. I could even have seen that maybe there was something that was somewhat better than it was being made to seem. I did not expect the surface to be teeming with people. And even if it were, I would never have expected them to be literally having picnics and little orgies. And even if they were, I would not have expected those things to have been going on for hundreds of years. It's really all taken together what is so insulting about the whole thing. It's like, it's one thing to lie to me about a part of this, and it's another thing. I mean, I think a lot of us are only in the past decade or so really getting more educated on the ways in which systemic oppression has shaken out for the Black community in the United States. And something that a lot of folks didn't know until recently, and I say a lot of folks didn't know until recently because social media has made it so that a lot more of the history that doesn't make its way into textbooks for teenagers is being circulated. And there are, there's a double-edged sword to the internet. And it's simultaneously a cesspool of some of the worst impulses of humanity and a source of deep misinformation, hate speech, whatever. However, then there's the opposite side of the coin in which you have all of us getting to see the awful shit happening in real time in a way that we never used to, which is really putting in sharp relief the extent to which injustice infects the nation and the planet. And I believe that everything that's happening in the Gaza Strip right now is a particularly good example. And I talk about this with Rashawn in the episode where we just recently recorded of Hunger Games, which she and I had to record yesterday instead of Friday. So apologies, that's up late, but it will be up today. But we are, if you are somebody who is simultaneously exposed to big news organizations on television and the internet, but you also follow smaller companies like Al Jazeera, or you follow people who are on the ground on TikTok or Twitter, you will have seen the bizarre disconnect that's happening where you get to like two totally different versions of the news, and you get language from larger organizations that is so equivocating that it's essentially meaningless, and in the face of the horrors that you're seeing from other outlets makes no sense. So for those unaware, or for those maybe listening down the line a little bit from when this is recorded, last week, the IDF bombed a hospital. Well, they've done more. This is an ongoing situation. And they have like done this. Everybody knows that they have done this. And yet Biden made a speech like 3 days ago in which he said, well, we can't have, we have to like not get to a point where we're encouraging bombing hospitals. And he said it as if this were a hypothetical, unthinkable thing, and not something that had not only already happened, but happened and again, and then a lot of like, well, then they shouldn't be using hospitals as human shields. We had no choice but to bomb the hospital. Our hands were tied. What did you think we were going to do? With this sense of like, it's not our fault they held a child up in front of them. I had to shoot, and it is not my fault the child was there. And I think a lot of us only recently discovered that like there were many, many people enslaved in the United States for decades after slavery was abolished. We didn't have this kind of immediate dissemination of news. So, you know, we have this abolishing, and people in major areas find out about it very quickly, and that news begins to spread. But consider the outlets in certain areas that control most of the information going into those areas don't want to lose their free labor. So they simply don't report this. They just don't. So you have the phenomenon of people finding out literally decades after that they have been enslaved this whole time, and this has all been illegal, and that the war is over, we won. And it's like, wait, what? So this feels like something that could really happen. The idea of, we had these enslaved people working to create an ecosystem and terraforming that would make it safe and habitable. And then we were like, yeah, but like, they're not really people, right? Like, ew, they're just not, like, I don't want to, like, how are we going to sell real estate in this area if like they're living here? I just don't see it. Like, don't you think it would probably sell a lot better if we made this sort of like a luxury complex? And, you know, it's just like, they're not the type that you want at this complex. So, you know, we could just like not tell them, and I think it would be fine. It's so very possible. You know what I'm saying? Just the where are these people getting their news from? The people who control everything. Why would they tell them, oh, we don't need your free labor anymore? What fucking motivation do they have to inform them? There is nothing to be gained from that. So, yeah, this all tracks, is what I'm saying. Human nature, ladies and gentlemen, fucking always reliable. So, I've gotten ahead of myself, as I so often do, but you know that I can't just like not talk about how this is all a lie off the top. So let's back up to chapter 7. And it turns out that I was right about the drugging, but I was wrong in thinking any of the things described at the end of the last chapter didn't happen. I'm thinking this is a hallucination. I can't speak tonight. I haven't had a drink. I am not stoned. I don't know what's going on. But I had thought that this was a hallucination, that he was so fixated on ensuring his own death that even when unconscious, he was imagining his death. No. Turns out they fake a hanging, and I'm not entirely sure. I think it's supposed to be that his uncle just doesn't tug hard enough, and the drugging made his heart slow, so it seemed as if he were dead. And then they smuggle his body out of there, which that's my primary question, is how they get his body out, because I believe it's mentioned at some point, but I don't remember. Is it supposed to be that his, because traditionally their bodies are left until they just rot away and then they're removed, right? After it's just gone on for so long. So I don't know if they have somebody on the inside that's, took him down, or if they him taking his wife's body down was considered a huge risk. And it was already he was going to get in massive trouble. And then burying her where he did was taking it over the top. I was pretty sure that he felt as if they were watching him as he did it. So I don't know how they pulled this off, but it's pretty clear the Sons of Ares have got some locks. That's not the word I want. Well, I guess I was going to say locked in, that they have some ways of getting into the system of cameras and whatnot. So it may be that they were able to just pull the cameras away for just a moment while they got him down. But we start chapter 7 with him. I do not see Io in death. My kin believe we see our loved ones when we pass on. There is an old man with dew on his cap who makes safe the vale, and he stands with our kin waiting for us along the stone road besides which sheep graze. They say the mist there is fresh and the flowers sweet, and those who are buried pass along the stone road faster. But I do not see my love. I do not see the vale. I see nothing but phantom lights in darkness. I feel pressure, and I know, as would any miner, that I am buried beneath the earth. I loose a soundless scream. Dirt enters my mouth. Panic fills me. I cannot breathe, cannot move. The earth hugs me until I finally claw my way free, feel air, gasp oxygen, pant and spit dirt. So I could not believe that they literally bury him alive. That feels extremely unnecessary. But what do I know? And he is fucking annoyed, which is just funny. He's really genuinely I cannot believe you assholes saved me. And this is the primary sticking point for him as he gets brought into the whole conversation with the Sons of Ares. He's just if you could save me, you could have saved her. And I'm how, sir? You know that she didn't tell anybody what she was about to go do, but you telegraphed what the fuck you were up to all and sundry. So of course they were able to save you. They could plan ahead. They didn't know what she was going to do. So why are you thinking they're just mind readers? They didn't drug her first. And it's he knows he's been drugged. So it's just the irrationality of somebody who is pissed. They didn't get to die the way they wanted to, and their spouse died also in a way that they did not want. So they feel like they are completely out of control of the situation, which is correct. He is. And there is a woman named Harmony who over the course of the next chapters, proves to be adversarial. Now, I'm not going to pass judgment on Harmony, because she's clearly been fucking through it. There's a sense at one point, Darrow says that, like, she's definitely lost somebody. And then there's also this horrific scarring on her face that she has sustained from a steam burn, which means that she was, I think, working with minors, which isn't usual for women. So this bitch has a big chip on her shoulder, and I have to assume there's a very good reason for that, because she seems otherwise sensible. So I'm really eager to find out what the deal is. There are some people that are like that. You know what I mean? Like, you can run into somebody who's sort of unpleasant, but they seem so, like, they've got such common sense in so many ways that you're almost like, I'm finding it hard to dislike you because you're handling things in general in a competent way. And even when you're unpleasant, there's a certain, like, accuracy to it. But also, do you gotta be like this, though? And that's really where I come down with her a lot, is Harmony, you're not wrong, but, like, you don't have to be so cunty, do you? And the answer is likely, no, she doesn't, but she wants to, so fuck you. And I respect that. I definitely get it. And it turns out that they have a mission for him. The Sons of Ares, who he had called terrorists, and, like, you know, he's in a complete hellscape. So once he starts calling this particular group terrorists, immediately I'm like, yeah, those are the good guys. Okay, I see it. So they're wearing, I can't remember the word because it's not Halloween. I think he says, like, October night masks. I'm trying to find the spot here. But it's clearly like they're in the midst of Oktobernacht demon masks. That's what it is. Yeah. So he doesn't, like, know them right away, but she calls him Lazarus. And he says, I'm Darrow. Oh, we know who you are. Don't tell him anything, Harmony. The weakling gibbers. Dancer didn't tell us to discuss anything with him till we get home. Thank you, Ralph. I love this. He's like, don't tell him anything, and says her name. And then she's like, dude, are you fucking serious? Oh, this was really good. So yeah, she pulls her mask off, and he's just like, Christ, because she has this awful scar, and then on the other side, she's even more beautiful than Io used to be, and she looks angry and cruel. Her bottom teeth are uneven, and her nails poorly maintained. She has knives in her boots. I can tell by the way she flinched down when I grabbed her hand. The weakling, Ralph, is unremarkably ugly. Unremarkably ugly is so devastating. I mean, it is one thing if you're remarkably ugly. That's at least distinctive. Unremarkably ugly. Oh, you're just ugly in the way everybody's ugly. Ouch. I mean, I'm sure that just hits me particularly where it hurts because I at least need to stand out. If I'm gonna suck, at least let me suck so hard that I stand out among the other suckers. So, yeah, there's a point at which he's, like, on this edge where he could jump down in front of, like, vehicles and get killed. And he has the sense of, like, maybe I'll just do that. But he does not do it. It seems like he's tried to kill himself once, and he just gets that one try. And if he hasn't succeeded, then that's sort of it. You know? So I'm trying to convince myself this is not all some gold trick. That Harmony and Ralph are not enemies. And we pull off into the main tunnel road to a cul-de-sac. Half the bulbs are burned out. One flickers on and off above a garage near a warehouse marked with a queer symbol done in strange paint. We steer into the garage. The door closes and Harmony motions for me to get out of the tumbler. Home, sweet home, she says. Now time to meet Dancer. So, Dancer is Darrow believes actually Aries based on the way his men treat him. And it's kind of funny because he keeps saying, like, are you Aries? And I kept thinking, like, what do you mean? Because Sons of Aries, I'm just thinking this is a symbolic name. So, and it is, you know, but it just was funny that he was like, no, somebody has to, like, be Aries. And I was like, do they? But I guess they do. He's thick and terribly old, maybe in his 40s. Okay, that's enough of that. White swirls from his temples. A dozen twin scars mark his neck. I've seen their sort before. Pit viper bites. The arm on the left side of his body hangs limp. Nerve damage. But his eyes arrest me. They are brighter than most, swirling with patterns of true red, not rust red. He has a fatherly smile. And I love that he's like, you must be wondering who you are. And Harmony's like, no, he's not. He knows. And Dancer's like, of course he does. Okay. And there is an interesting thing here where when he's yelling at them about maybe they should have saved Harmony, she's the one you wanted. She could have been like, you know, she was a martyr. And Harmony says, martyrs are a dime a dozen. And then yawns. I slip forward like a serpent and grab her around the throat. Waves of anger ripple through my face till it goes numb and I feel tears welling behind my eyes. And even then, she's like, he lets her go and she can't let it go. And she calls his dead wife a dreamer as worthless as a flame over water. And I'm just like, Harmony, Jesus fucking Christ, this bitch just died like 2 days ago. Can you just not? And Dancer does say, Harmony, shut your bloody damn gob, which, fair. So, again, dreamers like your wife are limited. Understand that. The only power they have is in death. The harder they die, the louder their voice, the deeper the echoes. But your wife served her purpose. Then what's your purpose? The same as yours, to make the dream come true. So he gets a bath and he gets a change of clothes, and it's like a type of fabric he's never worn before. And he's just like, God damn, this is nice. This is soft. And when he bathes, it's an actual water shower, which he has never experienced and is really, really nervous in. I love this. Half the time, I feel like I'm drowning. The other half, I feel like a mixture of ecstasy and agony. And that's pretty good for, you know, and a shower, you're having your first water shower of your life. And you are already like injured with this whipping. Yeah, that's going to be difficult. Anytime, just think about how awful it is to shower when you've got like a sunburn, you know? So Dancer comes in and says, we saved your life, so don't you think that means that your life is ours? And he's like, my uncle saved my life. And Dancer's like, yeah, no. He finally told us about you, but he should have done it a long time ago. He's worked for us since before your father's death as an informer. We gave him a jammer to shut off their ancient cameras. There it is. Yes. He did the work of a ghost. So he continues to lash out for a while. I'm not going to go beat by beat over Darrow having a bit of a tantrum here. All of this boils down to him agreeing to play a game. There are 2 cards in the bowl. One bears the Reaper's scythe. The other bears a lamb. Pick the scythe and you lose. Pick the lamb and you win. Except I notice his voice fluctuate when he says this last bit. This is a test, which means there's no element of luck to it. It must then be measuring my intelligence, which means there's a kink. The only way the game could test my intelligence is if the cards are both sides. That's the single variable that could be altered. I stare into Dancer's handsome eyes. It's a rigged game. I'm used to these. And usually I follow the rules, just not this time. And I'm like, you usually follow the rules, but you only just figured out the big game was rigged a little bit ago. So I don't know if I'd flatter myself like this, sir, but okay. I reach into the bowl and pull a free card, taking care I only can see its face. Only I can see its face. It is a scythe. I win, I say. He reaches for the card to see its face, but I shove it in my mouth, and I take the remaining card and toss it at him, a scythe. The lamb card simply looked too good not to eat, I say. So, it's the idea of one is a lamb, the other's a scythe, pick and you lose, pick the scythe and you lose. The only thing that he can tell that makes him realize is that the tone of voice is a test, so this isn't luck. And that's what tips him off to the fact that they have to both be. Which, I'll be honest, guys, I don't know that I would just, put that together. I would be able to be like, something about this isn't right. But I wouldn't immediately be like, oh, well, obviously it means both are this. I don't think I would figure that out. So this winds up being pretty significant in terms of what they're looking for, because they need somebody they think, as we find out later, is going to be able to believably impersonate a gold. And he says, imagine if there were a table covered with fleas. The fleas would jump and jump to heights unknown. Then a man came along and upturned a glass over the fleas. The fleas jumped and hit the top and could go no farther. Then the man removed the jar, and yet the fleas did not jump higher than they had grown accustomed because they believed there's still to be a glass ceiling. We are the fleas who jump high. Let me show you just how high. Your wife didn't die in vain. The Greens who helped us hijack the broadcast, we hacked in and played the true version over every HC on our planet. The planet, the clans of the 100,000 mining colonies and those in the cities have heard your wife's song. You tell tall tales, there aren't half that many colonies. He ignores me, as he should. They hear her song and they call her Persephone already. She belongs to her people, and they remember the old tales of a goddess stolen from her family by the god of death. Yet even when she was stolen, death could not forever keep her. She was the maiden, the goddess of spring, destined to return after each winter. Beauty incarnate can touch life even from the grave. That's how they think of your wife. And he says, can you just get to the fucking point? You want me for something. And Dancer says, what do you want, basically? And it comes down to him, he says, he will not live while Io lies dead, Augustus. And Dancer's sort of like, vengeance? That's not anything, dude. Come on. I told you I could give you justice, vengeance. And he says, help me kill the archgovernor. And then, interestingly, the tone changes and Dancer's like, dude, the archgovernor, I know that sounds like a big deal to you. And I get it, because it would. But you have got to hear me when I say that is such small potatoes. Once you find out the things that we know, it's not even going to be what concerns you anymore. This is a whole other thing. And they give him some glasses to put on, some sunglasses. He shoots upward, and even he's like, this is going very fast and very far. Are we going all the way to the surface? What the fuck? And then the doors open and the sun hits him. And he gets brought over to a window and he sees a city. One of spires, parks, rivers, gardens, fountains. It's a city of dreams, a city of blue water and green life on a red planet that is supposed to be as barren as the cruelest desert. This is not the Mars they show us on the HC. This is not a place unfit for man. It is a place of lies, wealth, and immense abundance. I gasp at the grotesquerie. And this is the sort of thing, this is a metaphor, ladies and gentlemen. We are told there isn't enough, and that we get what we get because there's just not really enough to go around. We are overpopulated is the favorite fucking thing to say. And it's absolute horseshit. Overpopulation isn't real. It's a line that is trotted out that is low-key racist and xenophobic, meant to imply these other countries don't control their birth rate. And it's always sort of meant to imply, if you ever really pay attention to the way people talk about it, there are too many of those other people. It's very rare that we are pointing this finger at white people when we talk about overpopulation. So you've already got that. And then there's the issue of if we aren't overpopulated, then we have enough resources. That's the crux of the matter, is overpopulation because what you're saying is the earth cannot adequately sustain the people that we have on it currently. We don't have enough to keep everyone alive. And that is just a straight up lie. And if we actually distributed things that exist now adequately, everybody would have more than they need in terms of housing, in terms of food, in terms of everything needed to keep human beings alive. We would be in a pretty state. It would be wonderful. But people are hoarding, and so it looks as if we don't have enough. And very effectively, in the same way as was done with the gammas, we get pitted against other people, and those people aren't doing much better than us, but it's just enough better for us to completely get distracted and be like, oh yeah, it's those guys that are the problem. And they don't want us to look at the insanity of what they are hoarding and hiding. And it's a real something that's sort of brought up a lot. And I think that this is a completely it's the sort of thing that I have to remind myself of also, is that we are unable to completely process and hold in our minds the size of $1 billion. So if, and I'm paraphrasing here, if you were paid $2,000 an hour and you worked full time with no days off from the birth of Jesus till today, you would have something like $2 billion. And that is a fraction of what many, the elite of America have in their possession, in their bank account. I say in their bank account, don't come at me with the pedantic, well, actually, it's not all liquid. You know what I fucking mean. So, all this to say, we think of they have a lot of money, but I don't think we can completely grasp just how much money. Like the extent of it is so beyond our understanding, because those are numbers that don't make sense, that it's this is a really, really good analogy for that. It's been populated for hundreds of years. It's not only habitable, but a lush, gorgeous landscape that's like the ideal of what could be manufactured and put together. This whole thing is so obscenely over any, like beyond anything that he could ever have imagined had been accomplished yet, that his brain can't grasp it. And he's watching these people with their amazing bodies, this setting that they're in, and the wine they're carrying as they like flutter around with their anti-gravity boots. And it just says, they look my age in a way, but seem so bloody foolish. I do not understand. Beyond them, ships flit through the air along beacon-lit avenues. On the ground, I see men and women moving through wide avenues. They are automobiles, color-coded lamps across lower levels, 100 shades of a dozen colors to form a hierarchy so complex, so alien, I scarcely think it a human concept. The buildings the paths wind through are huge, some of glass, some of stone. Beyond the city, Mars' red and barren surface is scarred with the green of grass and struggling woods. The sky above is blue, stained with stars. The terraforming is complete. It should not be this way for generations. Dancer sits in a chair behind me and waits till I can speak. He says a word and the windows darken. They told us we're man's only hope, that Earth was overcrowded. All the pain, all the sacrifice was for mankind. The laughing gold had reached the nearby spire. He surrenders to the girls and their kisses. Soon they will drink their wine and have their amusement. Dancer tells me how it is. Earth ain't overcrowded, Darrow. 700 years back, they expanded to their moon, Luna. Because it's so difficult to launch spacecraft through Earth's gravity and atmosphere, Luna became Earth's port through which it colonized the moons and planets of the solar system. 700 years? I gasp, feeling suddenly very stupid. On Luna, efficiency and order became the chief concern. In space, every set of lungs must have a purpose, so the first colors were gradually instituted and the reds were sent to Mars to gather the fuel for mankind. Are they terraformed, the other moons and worlds? The small moons, yes, most of the planets, obviously not the gas giants. It was in the early stages of the colonization when the wealthy of Luna began to realize Earth was nothing more than a drain on their profits. Even as Luna colonized the solar system, they were taxed and owned by corporations and countries on Earth. But those entities could not enforce their ownership, so Luna rebelled and the Earth lost. That was the conquering. Economics turned Luna into the power and port of the solar system, and the society began to change into what it is today. An empire built on red backs. Reds were sent to Mars 500 years ago. The other colors came to Mars about 300 years back, while our ancestors still toiled beneath the surface. High reds live as maintenance workers, sanitation, grain harvesters, assembly workers. Low reds are those of us born beneath the surface, the truest slaves. In the cities, the reds who dance disappear. Those who voice their thoughts vanish. Those who bow their heads and accept the rule of the society and their place in society, as all colors do, live on with relative freedom. 500 years. This is our bloody damn planet. Through sweat and toil it was made so, he agrees. Then what will take it back? Blood. Dancer smiles at me like a township alley cat. There's a beast behind this man's fatherly smiles. Eo was right. It comes to violence. Ooh, sorry. I'm seeing Alex over here. We're overpopulated, but kids these days just aren't having kids, so we need them to make more babies. Pick a lane, people, right? My hubby and I had this talk with my mom last night because she's firmly in the, well, they worked hard for their money, they should be able to keep as much as they want, and all we could do was shake our heads after a bit. And this is it. They really do. What they do is they convince everybody you are only a step away from being one of us. So if you act as if you deserve our money, eventually people are going to do that to you. Which, I have news for you all. If I were a billionaire and people acted entitled to my money, they could have it and it wouldn't affect me at all because it's billions of dollars. Like, do you understand how much money you would have to take and distribute before I would even notice it was gone? Like, this is the thing. That, like, literally, how much do you need? Why? What is it for? When do you reach a point where, oh, I have achieved an income equivalent to the, like, GDP of several small countries? I guess I'm satisfied now. Like, at what level do you have to say, now I can stop because I have enough? I am genuinely asking this question because I feel that if I were ever at this point right now with the podcast and stuff, I'm making the equivalent of about probably with Patreon only about $13 an hour. Throw in the spoil me's, I'd say probably $17 an hour. If I reached a point where I were making $80 an hour, which is laughably a fraction of what it would be for a CEO, I would start hitting a place where I'm feeling a little bit guilty if I'm not giving money away. That's the way I think. I start to get to 6-digit income, and I am feeling a responsibility and obligation to give money to friends, family, strangers, anybody. There just comes a point where I truly know myself that I would stop and say, okay, I'm safe now. My bills are covered. I can have everything on auto draft. I'm not worried about paying for groceries week to week. I can have health insurance coverage. I am safe and I can afford to stretch myself giving friends and family money because at least my obligations are taken care of. That's where I live, is a place of just wanting enough to live without the constant pit of anxiety in my stomach of knowing I got a repossession notice for my car last month because we were so far behind on our car payment. And we had to scrape together the money to get current. And now we're going to be late on our mortgage because we did that. All I want is to not have to live like that. And I can't fucking comprehend having what some of these people have and not feeling like a piece of shit for just holding on to it. I just don't get it. It's a type of illness, in my opinion. There's something that fucking short circuits in your brain when you pass a certain level of wealth. And I think you start to lose your humanity. There's no other explanation for me. So, anyway, he gets led to this person. This whole thing is so... When Dancer told me what I am to do, I laughed. I don't know if I can do it. The gray soldiers prowl the cities, ensuring order, ensuring obedience to the hierarchy. The whites arbitrate their justice and push their philosophy. Pinks pleasure and serve in high-color homes. Silvers count and manipulate currency and logistics. Yellows study the medicines and sciences. Greens develop technology. Blues navigate the stars. Coppers run the bureaucracy. Every color has a purpose. Every color props up the golds. The HC shows me colors I did not know existed. It shows me fashion, ludicrous and seductive. There are biomodifications and flesh implants. Women with skin so smooth and polished, breasts so round, hair so glossed that they appear a different species from Io and all the women I've ever known. The men are freakishly muscular and tall. Their arms and chests bulge with artificial strength, and they flaunt their muscle like girls showing off new toys. Now, I don't know if anyone listening has had this experience, but I, for several months, was doing a work study in Guatemala in an area that was, I wouldn't say that it was like, the word impoverished feels too dramatic. It was certainly people who were like way lower income, but for the area, they were making enough to like live comfortably, like in comparison to the US, you know what I mean? The main thing that I noticed living there at first was teeth, and how used I am in the United States to seeing people who have had orthodontia from childhood, and anything that was sort of even a little out of place was adjusted, and everybody has, for the most part, like if you had family that could afford it, smiles that are somewhat even, teeth that are mostly white. And I'm saying if your family could afford it, because God knows there were a lot of us who did not get that. I was lucky, and I didn't have parents who could afford it, but I was born with perfect teeth, so I didn't need braces. And then you begin to notice things like birthmarks on faces, or just small sort of like deformities of limb or ear or lips that would likely in the US have been immediately changed on birth. There would have been a surgery done to remove something. There would have been plastic surgery to like undo something that had like gone wrong. And, you know, by the time they were old enough, there was no scarring. It would simply look like they had been born that way. So you would just see a lot people who like reminded you that the way we think folks look, ordinary people, isn't actually true, right? Like, we in the United States, even with our shitty healthcare, we still have a sort of like standard that we expect in terms of care for appearances and the function of the body. And some things we cannot do anything for, but especially if it's cosmetic, we usually try. After living in Guatemala for like 3 months and not watching TV, I wasn't like doing anything to be exposed to the rest of the world while I was there. I was like in a full-on immersion program. I came home and I was so startled at how freakish everybody looked that was like on TV or the news or whatever. Like, I got so used to actual human beings that the sight of somebody that I now, from where I'm sitting in 2023, I would look at and be like, God, she is gorgeous. Coming from then, I would look at and I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? They looked abnormal and really creepy. And there was something about it that was like so sickening, because I was both repulsed by these people, and I also knew intellectually that it was only up till very, very recently that I saw this as the epitome of beauty, and how unnatural and like completely unattainable it is unless you get surgery or unless you have like procedures done. And I also was keenly aware that it would only be a few months before I went back to seeing this as normal. And there was not really anything that I could do to keep that from happening. If I moved back to the US, it was only by remaining in an area where that was not the norm and keeping myself isolated from a lot of media. That was the only way I was able to shake it. And then, of course, that's exactly what happened. I come back and I get immersed in it again, and it becomes ordinary and normal to me. And I think about that every day, how I have been programmed to see things over time that are completely unnatural as not only natural, but expected, like the standard. And this is like something that happens with body types as well. If you grew up in the 90s, you know the expectation of the female body was no more than 110 pounds. And this was at like 5'8". Extreme thinness was the norm. So any woman who was anywhere near a size like 4 or 6 was seen as really heavy and made fun of. And now you see women who are size 8 and 10, and you're like, oh, she's lovely, put her on screen, when they would never have been given leading roles, ever. In the 90s or early 2000s, it would just not fucking happen. I kept thinking this when I was watching One Piece, because the girl who plays Nami is a very healthy, like muscular girl. And I was remembering how Mariah Carey was like, she was headlined on a tabloid as Mariah's Porky Pins. And she was maybe a size 4. Maybe. I'm going to say probably a 2. And they were like, it was a huge splashy headline about what a porker she was. And at the time, I was in agreement because that's all I had been trained to see. So I just really like this because I think that it's so easy to read like, oh, these people look freakish with all their surgeries. And we think when we hear things like that of people like Joan Rivers, you know, of people who have had so many surgeries that eventually they begin to like not look like a person. Madonna, you know, folks who have just overdone it. But I really think it's important to remember that celebrities that we consider natural, that we're like, oh, she's aging so well, I can almost guarantee you with like money on the table, that person has had extensive surgery. They have just gone to a really good surgeon. And we see it as natural and like they're just aging normally. No, they are not. They have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to, quote, age gracefully. And so I just want everybody to keep in mind, this sort of stuff that we see as freakish is so far beyond the line. It's not even what he's talking about here, you know? So we still, as readers, don't know what it is he's being asked to do. And Harmony finally just is like, 97 people have tried this before you and died, or wanted to die. And he's like, ooh, oh, maybe I should have just let myself hang. Well, it turns out they want to make him a gold. And I'm thinking, all right, well, you know, paint him gold, I guess. I don't know. I'm over here like genuinely. I read about the guy with 8 fingers on each hand. I know that they like physically alter, but I'm not getting it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not understanding what this means. And the way that this all, they go into a club. And I love this when they are walking towards the door. Let's see, a dark doorway where an electronic flying dragon shimmers on the surface of the stone. A massive brown with a mod job for a nose stops us. And he sniffs him and is just like dyeing his hair. A ruster, this one be. And they don't want to let him in. But then they're like, we're going in to see Mickey. And they show the symbol for the Sons of Ares. And both of these guys are like, Jesus Christ. And they get the fuck up out of the way. So they go in and meet Mickey the Carver. A scalpel of a man with a crooked smile and black hair that hangs like a puddle of oil down one side of his head. Now, I am sorry, kids, but we are all picturing Gary Oldman in The Fifth Element, right? Like, come now. It's completely impossible for me to imagine anybody else. That was all I was seeing in this role. A tattoo of an amethyst mask wreathed in smoke winds around his left hand. It's the sigil of a violet, the creator's, so it's always shifting. Other violet symbols stain his wrists. And he's trying this puzzle, and he's like not getting it. And later on, our guy Darrow does it. And then he does another one. And then he does like 11 more. And finally this guy is like, okay, I get it. Will you not just like finish my game for me? I would appreciate it. But Mick, as Darrow or Dancer calls him, is a harder sale on this than I was thinking. Because if 97 people have died or asked for death, I'm thinking he has done this before. And it wasn't until later that I was really like, well, the way that Harmony said it was that we know of, which implies this is over the series of hundreds of years that we have attempted to fight back. Like, I'm thinking 97 since the Sons of Ares have existed as it does now. But I don't think that's actually what she meant. Excuse me. That's so funny. In the chat, Alex says, yes, but the voice in the audiobook reminds me of Rumpelstiltskin from Once Upon a Time. And I definitely agree, because especially he says dearie and boy. He's got a very like saccharine way of speaking sometimes. And I definitely see what you mean. But yeah, so the thing that Dancer shows him, he's like, oh, we've got a present for you. And he says, what is it? You know what they are. You brought them here? How did you get them? Are you insane? We need them attached soon. Attached to him. Leave, Mickey screams at his entourage. Leave, you simpering, sycophantic miscreants. I'm talking to you, you freaks. Get out. When his entourage is scurried away, he opens the box and dumps the contents on the table. 2 golden wings, the sigils of a gold, clatter onto the table. Dancer sits. We want you to make our boy here a gold. Now, I don't know what are these wings metal? Because I felt like I didn't fully get how this worked and what it was. The implication is that they had to kill a gold to get these. Is that right? Or that they're counterfeit? I'm not sure which one. But anyway, this is when Darrow has to prove himself. And, you know, the main thing is, and this is where we really start to get into what I didn't understand. There's DNA matching him with the wings. Cerebral extraction. Do you know they have subdermal markings in their skulls? Of course you didn't. data chips attached to their frontal cortexes to substantiate their caste. Then there's synapse linkage, molecular bonding, tracking devices, the quality control board, and there's the trauma and the associative reasoning. Say we make his body perfect. There's still one problem. We cannot make him smarter. One cannot make a mouse a lion. And I was just like, you gotta what now? Like, in Gattaca, all they had to do was make him walk again and give him height of like an extra 3 inches. So they had to stretch his legs, which was like an agony. Which seems really, really simple in comparison to all of this. And the point that they want is they want to have him join the academy and like rise up amongst the other golds in a position that matters and be their inside man, which is a really big plan. That's like long-term, really dug in. That's a crazy plan, and I'm very here for it. So eventually Darrow convinces him. Dancer is just like, all right, how much do you think this is going to cost? And number 12 is the carving. His life becomes agony. And I'm realizing like I am almost out of time here, and I haven't even reached close to the end of this section. I'm thinking you guys may have to cut back on how long you make the sections. So there are all kinds of like tests that he has to undergo. And the worst part is that Darrow's dreaming that he's with Io when he's out and unconscious. So every time he has to come back and do these like bullshit tests and exercises, it's like he's literally leaving paradise to come back to a world where she is dead and he is in horrific pain over and over. Like, this is really rough. There's much work to be done on this ruster body if we want to make you into an iron gold. And that is the golden ancestors. They call them the iron golds. They were hard men. They stood lean and fierce upon their battle cruisers as they laid waste to the armies and republic fleets of Earth. What creatures they were. It took generations of eugenics and biological tampering to make them. Forced Darwinism. They say carvers will never duplicate the beauty of golden men. The Board of Quality Control taunts us. Personally, I do not want to make you a man. Men are so very frail. Men break, men die. No. I've always wished to make a god, so why not carve you to be the god of war? Mickey replaces the skin of my back and the skin of my hands where Io applied bandages to my burns. This, he says, is not to be my real skin. It's only a homogeneous base layer. Mickey carves me again. The agony is beyond language or comprehension. The way he says this: your skeleton is weak because Mars' gravity is 0.3 of Earth's. Also, you have a diet deficient in calcium. So, we'll have to make your skeleton 6 times stronger. You must be of iron if you want to last the Institute. This will be fun. For me, not you. Oh my God. He reinforces the bones of my arms, then he does my ribs, my spine, my shoulders, my feet, my pelvis, and my face. This is the stuff of nightmares. Like, you guys, if you have followed Unspoiled in any capacity where there has been some kind of surgical horror like this, this is particularly something that I am very sensitive to and hate. I just hate it. It's like there's something about medical horror that gets at this particular place in the like human nature that makes me afraid in a way that like genuine sadism doesn't. Sadism is scary. Enjoying seeing people in pain is scary. But there's something about it that I can also sort of understand in terms of like, well, you're just fucked up. You just have a fucking screw loose and you like seeing people in pain because you like the power, and I think that's sickening, but I can understand that. And medical stuff, it's so detached from the suffering. The suffering is so irrelevant. And that's the part that I have a hard time with. Because at least with sadism, the suffering is the point, and I hate suffering, but I can at least be like, okay, well, this is the exact opposite of me. I have a real aversion to inflicting pain. I would rather kill somebody than torture somebody, for example. I could not torture. I just couldn't, like, it just, the very idea makes me sick. So all I have to do is be like, all right, opposite of me. And I can comprehend that. But the idea of somebody's pain and suffering just not mattering, that I can't understand. I don't know how you turn that off. It's like a part of you is just deleted. With sadism, it's like that part of you is inverted and broken, but it's still there. It's just perverted. But when it's like, I don't even care, it's just deleted and there's just a gap, which feels even more upsetting somehow. Do you get what I mean? I don't know. So anyway, this was incredibly hard to read. And he talks about the Grove. And when I was young, I used to live in a place called the Grove. We had spectacles every night, celebrations of color and sound and dance. There was a madness to it. They made us take pills that could make us fly between the planets on wings of dust to visit the fairy kings of Jupiter and the mermaids of Europa. My mind always separate from my body, no peace to it, no end to the madness. And I cannot imagine that. They were basically like, we need you to trip all the time. Word? And is this to make you into a creative, I guess? So let's see. Would you have been happier if you knew you were a slave? No. Is it not better to lie? It's better to not make slaves. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. He's acting like, well, you were going to be a slave either way. So would you rather know about it or not? I'm like, or you maybe wouldn't have been a slave either way. Like, he's just so accepting of the status quo. And honestly, that's very representative of how a lot of people are. They're just like, well, it's this or that. And there's like a completely false dichotomy built into that they just totally do not see. So gradually he is weaned from his medication. But what happens then is that he starts going through physical therapy. He is starting to like come into his own body. And I say his own body, but it's not. It's somebody else's. But Harmony is pushing him to build muscle. And Mickey is like horrified because in his opinion, she's going to like undo what he has done here if she doesn't proceed with caution. And she doesn't want to hear it. She says that he didn't protest. Mickey says, Dancer, Darrow is like a stallion, one of the old stallions of Earth, beautiful beasts that will run as hard as you push them. They will run and run and run until they don't, until their hearts explode. Dancer's voice, Ares once told me it's the hottest fire that forms the sternest steel. Keep pushing the boy. I resent two of my teachers after overhearing their words. Mickey for thinking me weak, Dancer for thinking me his tool. Only Harmony doesn't anger me. Her voice, her eyes seethe with an anger I feel in my own soul. She may have Dancer now, but she lost someone. She's no schemer like Dancer, and she's like me, brimming with rage that makes all else inconsequential. So he gets more drugs, and he begins to build muscle, and he begins to look a lot more like a gold. But he's thinking, I look like a gold. And they're like, you look like a brass or bronze or whatever it is. Like, you look like one of the low-class golds who's kind of, like, trashy. So you're looking better than you used to, but not really at the level that we're going to need you at. And also, Darrow is having a hard time looking in the mirror because he feels like he does not know who he is anymore. They have made him embody a type of being that is everything he hates, which must be the most surreal thing. And eventually they want to give him a fake name, and he won't do it. He's like, you have taken literally everything from me that made me who I was. I'm going to keep my fucking name, and you can fight me. And they pretty much let it go. They're like, all right, fine. And there is a scene here with this girl, Evie, who's the one that he saw on his way in the first time he came into the club. And he's like, she seems like intimidated by him, but also tells him that he's beautiful. I look at Evie's white wings and know how ugly she must think them to be on her back, how she must hate them. I want to say something kind to her. I want to make her smile if she can. But he doesn't say anything. And she leaves, and eventually he has a moment with Mickey. And he says, you give the girls wings, but you don't let them fly, do you? It's impossible for them to fly. They're simpler things than you. And we had found out he brings girls into his family only to sell them away when someone bids high enough. I grew tired of seeing all the full eyes go hollow. There is no love, no family or trust. This place is sick. So he says, you aren't going to do that to Evie. Be kind to her. Don't make her dance. Give her a plush life, or I'll come back to pull your hands off your body. Which I have to say is a pretty baller fucking line. Pull your hands off your body. It's so like, I don't know. There's something about that that's so basic. Just that you could be creative about it. But why? When you just do something like, oh, I'll just take your hands off. That's bad enough. And it's so much more forceful. It's just a suggestion of like ripping. I'm realizing, guys, I am like 10 minutes over and I didn't get to chapter 13. I'm not gonna. I can't go far enough over. I'm going to go ahead and cover it at the beginning of the next episode and just try and pace myself a little bit better. There was so much to get through, and a lot of the points that I'm making, like that take up time in this episode, I will not have to make again. We're getting a lot of like table setting established, so I'm going on my socialist and communist rants. I feel like there will come a point where it doesn't need to be said. So I think it'll go faster. But you understand. I just have to say the things I have to say. So I hope you guys will understand. And I promise I will catch up. But next time. I did read chapter 13. But nevertheless. All right, guys. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate you all. And really enjoying this book. Until next time. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.